Thank you for coming out. I really want to emphasize, and I think you'll hear this repeatedly as we're talking here today, that we have got to do things differently. I think that our political culture is broken. I think our political system is broken. It's no more difficult to understand than to say that I personally don't think that either the Democratic or the Republican parties solve enough problems to deserve their shared monopoly on our choices. It does not make sense to me that in the United States of America, where we're all about freedom, that on our ballot, we don't really have it, do we? You're stuck between one or the other. But everybody here has been to the toothpaste aisle and made it out alive. And I think if you can get through the toothpaste aisle and make it out alive, you probably could handle a ballot with more choices. Where we are is in large part because of that structure. Because both parties know, and a lot of powerful people in both parties know, that all they really have to do is convince you that the other side is worse, and once they've done that, they don't have to solve our problems, do they? Because they can get reelected anyway. And so one of the important things for us to do is to look at that system and say, we are better than that. That Clarke County is better than that Osceola is better than that. So I want to start by doing that. And this is not a trick, okay? I'm going to ask people to raise their hands, but to spoil it for you, we're going to clap for you if this is something that describes you. So please raise your hand if you are a registered Republican voter. And we're going to give you some applause. Thank you for being here. Raise your hand if you're a registered independent voter. All right. Thank you. And to make sure that we're being fair to everybody, let's have some applause for the Democrats. I want to prove the naysayers wrong and show people that Democrats, Republicans, and Independents can come together to do something wonderful.
Yes.
And I want to do that by singing the first verse of America the Beautiful together.
Yes.
Yeah. So, it starts so beautiful for spacious skies. I'm not going to pick a note to take us off. Someone else can do that. And then we'll just go from there.
Oh,
beautiful for spacious skies, forever waves of grain, for purple mountains, majesties above the fruited plains. America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea.
There you go. Problem solved. Thank you for coming. You're being held back again. If anybody's does anybody have, Larry Keller just called me. I feel like I shouldn't call him right now to tell him where we are, but if anybody's got his number and can shoot him a text to let him know where he can come and meet us, that'd be great. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about myself, the work I've done at the Attorney General's office, the work I've done at the State Auditor's office, and a little bit about where I think we are as a state, and then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A on whatever issues any of you want to talk about. But I'll start here. My name's Rob Sand. I grew up in Decorah, northeast Iowa. My dad's family has been in Winneshiek County pretty much since we got off the boat from Norway. My wife is from Denison area. Her family is mostly Danish, so it's a mixed marriage. We've got two boys. One turns 9 next week, the other's 11, and a wonderful dog that just turned 5. And I just turned 43, if you're curious. So you might not believe me, but it's true. So when I was growing up in Decorah, my dad and I would go hunting and fishing pretty regularly. My family would also be in church every Sunday. I actually had an uncle that was a pastor and ended up as a bishop in the ELCA church, and an aunt that does religious artwork, so faith is a very big part of our life. All three of those things, hunting, fishing, and faith, are still a big important part of my life. To some people that sounds like it should be affiliated with a political party. I don't. It sounds like a pretty common small town upbringing in the state of Iowa. My parents were independent voters. When I was growing up, I remember them voting for candidates in both parties. They were more concerned with who was right on the issues that were most important to them that year and what the character of that person was. And so I also registered as an independent voter when I first registered to vote. I don't really like political parties. I know I'm saying that in a room full of people who are oftentimes in my party and sometimes doing the work for them. I thank you for doing that work. We do have to have people doing it. But the problem with partisanship right now in this country is too many of us have stopped thinking for ourselves. Too many of us just say, oh, if this is what so-and-so says, then it must be right, or they say it must be wrong. And this is one of our biggest problems that we face right now. And so I registered as independent, not just because my parents were, but because I didn't like the idea of just deciding what was right or what was wrong based on what somebody else told you. Now, I registered as a Democrat because I realized in order to vote in a primary, you have to do that, right? Can anyone explain that to me in a way that makes it make sense? The independent voters are actually given less of a voice in our democracy. You have to sign up with a private club to participate in a primary that your tax dollars pay for as an independent voter. That does not make sense to me, especially when all of the founders of this country warned us about partisanship. They used mostly the term factionalism at the time. But they would warn us that this is one of the greatest risks that our country could face, was the idea that there would be two great parties united only in their hatred for each other. Congratulations, John Adams, you hit the nail on the head. It's 2025 and we are living his nightmare, right? And so I did register as a Democrat because I wanted to vote in the primary. And it wasn't flipping a coin. My faith teaches me to care for the little guy. I think the Democratic Party is the party for the little guy. And I remember watching Bill Clinton brag about balancing the budget and using the surplus to pay down the debt. And I remember thinking, thank you. Because I was a teenager and thinking, I don't want to have to pay that off someday. After finishing all my schooling, I went and worked at the Attorney General's office for 7 years, where I was the chief public corruption prosecutor for the state of Iowa. So if there was a case, a town clerk maybe, or a city or a county employee that had embezzled money or committed fraud, it typically landed on my desk. If you remember the Iowa Film Office tax credit scandal, I prosecuted all those cases. We've got a little bit of space back here, folks, if you want to come down to this end. There's just a little more standing room.
One chair up here.
Yeah. Oh, we got chairs. Are there any more chairs back there? Super. I was going to bring a couple out. Come on in. We're pretty low key around here. I'm Rob. You were here earlier. Hi. Rob. You too. Thanks for coming. So if you remember the Iowa Film Office tax credit scandal, I prosecuted those cases. The largest lottery rigging scheme in American history. I ran the investigation and the prosecution that held the folks accountable for that and sent the mastermind to prison for that. If you like reading books, I wrote a book about it. It's called The Winning Ticket. The Washington Independent Review of Books said that it was one of their favorite reads of the year for the year that it came out. If you're not the book reading type, there's a documentary. Lottodoc.com. It's 45 minutes long, not too terribly long, and it's pretty entertaining. Not only is it a true crime story, not only is there a courtroom drama, but there's Bigfoot hunters. Like people that go out into the woods to look for Sasquatch. They were involved in claiming some of the tickets. So, quite a story. I noticed though that I was starting to darken my view of the world after being a criminal prosecutor for 5 or 6 years. We got some of the guys from the local PD here. I appreciate you guys being here. When you're working in the police department, there's a lot of wonderful, good things that you can do for people, right? You could be the first responder on an accident and help save somebody's life. You can help find a missing kid. By the time a situation comes to a prosecutor, we are only dealing with the absolute worst things that human beings can do to each other. And after 6 years of thinking only about that and nothing else, I was noticing that I wasn't quite the happy and optimistic person that I used to be. And so I thought, well, what could I be doing that would have more of a positive impact? And I worked a lot with the state auditor's office because they do Iowa's public corruption investigations. So they send those investigations to me, or well, they conduct those investigations, they send them to the Attorney General's office where they'll land on my desk. And it would be up to me to take them forward for the next steps. And I had noticed some things over the years that I thought could be done differently. I thought, well, I could run and bring a law enforcement perspective to those investigations to make sure those investigations were done in a way that were going to work in a courtroom. But I also thought that alone doesn't seem like a good reason to run for office. It's a pretty big thing to do. Maybe I should do my homework, better inform myself. And so I did. I sat down and I read Chapter 11 of the Iowa Code 3 times. That's the one that says Auditor of State. I'm probably the only person alive that has ever read it 3 times. And if you're having trouble falling asleep tonight, I would recommend it. What I found in there actually made me excited. The office has this tremendous capacity to promote government efficiency. And I knew that they weren't doing it. They were doing audits, as they should do, but their audits were very much financial statement focused, cut and dry, and the taxpayer's watchdog part of the job was sort of missing. They were just sort of saying, you know, okay, we're the CPAs and the financial statements look good, but there wasn't much of a bark behind that for really trying to push things in a better direction and make things run more efficiently. And I thought, boy, I could run for state auditor, and if I win, I can use the law as it's already written to make government work more efficiently and effectively for everyone. Which is wonderful, because then we don't have to argue about whether or not we want to cut taxes or hire a new sheriff's deputy. We can do both, right? If we focus on efficiency. So I ran and I won, and we started a government efficiency program. It's called PI, Public Innovations and Efficiencies. We have about 500 participating entities across Iowa's cities, schools, and counties every single year, 500. They come from every piece of Iowa. This program is so good at saving tax dollars that it has been copied in 2 other states. What else did I do in my first term as state auditor? I took a solitary stand against your tax dollars getting used to pay for the most egregious sexual harassment cases in Iowa. There's a law on the books that says if someone who's a public employee commits a tort, a wrongful act, and it's not just that they did it, but that it was willful and wanton, a higher bar, we can go after them and we can make them pay for it. So let's look at a case like the one for Dave Jameson, who was head of the Iowa Finance Authority. We paid out, I want to say, $4 million to the targets of his sexual harassment. Why on earth would we not turn and go after Dave Jameson and go after his pension and go after whatever assets he has to make him pay back the taxpayers of the state of Iowa? This is one of those moments that always makes me think of Zoolander, when Mogatu says, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here. How am I the only one that thinks that the guy that did it should be the one paying for it? How is it that I'm the only one saying, no, we're not going to support this unless we're going after him? But I did that every single time that I thought a settlement hit that standard. Not a settlement, but the conduct, what the person did, what the man did. Because it's the right thing to do. And I don't care if I am the only person standing up for the right thing to do. And I was in every one of those situations. I was the only one saying, no, we shouldn't be doing this. We should be making them go pay for it. Why? Because it protects taxpayers, it upholds the idea of personal responsibility, and it deters people like that from conducting acts of sexual harassment in the future. We also uncovered a record amount of misspent money in my first term as state auditor. How did we do that? Number one, by being assertive, right? Anybody here ever been audited before? It's not the most exciting thing to raise your hand for. But if your auditor comes in and you say, I'd rather you not look over here, and they say, oh, okay, do you suppose they're very good at their job? Everybody in our office, me included, if you say, well, we don't want you to look over here, we go, oh, now I really want to look over here. Twice as much as I did before. In fact, it wasn't even something I was going to look up. If you don't want me to, I'm definitely going to do it, right? So we started being more assertive. I will take, when I am, back in Decorah, in the nursing home, wondering if I have made a good use of my life, 1 or 2 stories will come to mind from my first year in the state auditor's office. One is a guy who was talking to a former coworker of mine, and he was talking about the new state auditor, and he said, yeah, we used to make these purchases in my state agency where I work that we knew were technically illegal. But we quit doing it because it seems like the new state auditor is more willing to call us out for it. Yes, I am. As the kids say on social media, I feel seen. You understand me, you get me. You know, yeah, I really am. That is my job, and I like to do my job, yeah. So we were more assertive. Here's the other way we did this. We did it with different people who think differently working together. It wasn't just that it was a whole bunch of accountants and somebody that worked in law enforcement as a prosecutor. It was also that it was Democrats and Republicans working together, right? As my dad likes to say, even a blind hog will find an acorn every now and then. Or the more polite version, a broken clock is right twice a day. When I won in 2018, the first decision I had to make was who was going to be in the 2 deputy positions in the office, the 2 highest positions in the auditor's office. And I picked the people that my predecessor actually wanted. The person that I had just beat in the election. An independent and a Republican who had actually made campaign contributions to my opponent. Now, a lot of people who pay attention to politics would say you're doing it wrong if you're promoting the people who oppose you. To them, I would say, I'm trying to do public service, not politics, and that's the difference. We, I think, found a record amount of misspent money because we had those broken clocks sitting around that table together that occasionally were right twice a day. And because we weren't having conversations about what's better for the party or what's better for so-and-so's career, we were just focused on the questions that we should be focused on. What did we do when this happened 5 years ago? What does the law say about how these funds are supposed to be used? Where's the contract that governs the use of these funds? Those are the actual questions that are material and important for the work that we do. Now, so we uncovered, working together, a record amount of misspent money. What was the response in Des Moines to that? To literally pass a law making it harder for your state auditor to find misspent money. If you are not familiar with this, folks, I think this is the clearest red flag you could possibly have that things are moving in the wrong direction in Des Moines. They passed a law with 8 different categories of documents that the auditor's office is no longer allowed to look at. And just in case we had a disagreement and wanted to appeal the decision to not give us documents, we would now have to go to a 3-person arbitration panel. The 3 people on that panel having 2 people working at the pleasure of the governor. You can do the math on that, right? You don't need the accounting degree. It's wrong. Every single government watchdog agency, every single government watchdog, every single state auditor, Democrat, Republican, Independent, that weighed in on this bill to a T, 100% of them said, this is a bad idea, it will lead to an increase in waste, fraud, and abuse of your tax dollars. And they signed it into law anyway. While they were busy doing that, what have you got? An economy that is 49th in the country for economic growth, according to the Trump administration. Personal income growth that is 48th in the country, according to the Trump administration. Cancer growth rate that is number 1 in the country. And an education system that is just in the middle of the pack. What happens these days? This hasn't happened with my boys yet, but what happens these days when somebody, whether they're in Iowa, a kid in Iowa or a kid somewhere else, picks up a quarter, the Iowa State quarter, and they say, foundation in education, why did they put that on the quarter? Mom and Dad? Because we were. What do we tell kids now? We used to be? Folks, Nebraska is beating us. and I do sort of mean that as a joke, but also I am serious. They are. And it's just one more piece of evidence that goes to show you that the people in Des Moines are serving insiders who don't want to be held accountable, special interests who want your tax dollars, they're not serving Iowans. Now, as I have been thinking about this a lot, I have realized this comes back full circle to me, why that makes me so upset. And it's this story from the New Testament that has always stuck out to me ever since I was a kid. It's Jesus going to the tables of the money changers at the temple and flipping over their tables and saying, you brood of vipers, right? And you know why it stuck out to me? Because he's normally a super nice guy. The nicest guy, right? Feed the hungry, clothe the naked, heal the sick. What are we doing when our cancer rates are going up and the people who are sitting in the seats of power in Des Moines are just making it harder for you to know how they are misspending your money? That's it. There's a 6-word encapsulation of my faith that I think summarizes it better than anything else. Comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. And I'm running for governor because there are some tables that need flipping in Des Moines right now, and I would like to help with that. Happy to take questions from anybody. Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bianca, as you know, and I'm from the Clarke County Democrats proudly. And I'm also the chair of this group of people that elected me and made me stand up for what I was talking about, put my money where my mouth is, so to speak, and I'm proud to do it. I'm a proud Democrat since the first time Obama ran. Before that, I was an independent. My
Yeah.
husband is a veteran. I am a federal worker, retired, so 30 years. I've seen it and done it for the federal government. My question for you, with that in mind, first, thank you for talking about what you want to do.
Yeah.
That is lacking in a lot of candidates, and I commend you for that. I think you're a fantastic auditor, and I can't wait to see if you carry that same passion and everything should you win the nomination, and then of course, when you win governorship. So, one thing that bothers me, based on culture, based on basic humanity, is the current governor signed over, and I don't care how many they are, National Guards to go and help the immigration, customs and enforcement and border patrol. And what that means to local law enforcement who's already taxed and doing their jobs and keeping us safe. But in my opinion, it's a misuse of funds. In my opinion, it's a burden on their families. In my opinion, National Guard should stay and do their mission, which is to take care of their natural state, not be sent down to the border and hang out. Your thoughts on that, and you as governor, well, first as auditor, shouldn't those be funds that are looked into? Secondly, as candidate for governorship, please talk to that.
Sure. We did review that decision and that use of those funds in the auditor's office. It was not inappropriate in terms of a use of funds from a legal perspective, right? From an accounting perspective. And I always tell people at the auditor's office, we are not in the wisdom business, we are in the integrity business. Does that make sense to everybody? Mm-hmm. If you got the dumbest idea in the world, we are here to make sure that you did it correctly. Right? And on occasion we will say, right, because again, taxpayers watchdog, if it's something that's truly wasteful, you should not have lit that money on fire, we will tell you about that. But for the most part, we are there to say, okay, you chose to spend the money this way, you complied with the statutes that were relevant, and you did not break any rules in doing that. They did not break any rules in doing that. So I can tell you that. Would I have done it? Here's what I can say going forward. If I'm governor in the state of Iowa, we are prioritizing public safety right here in the state of Iowa for Iowans. And to me, that certainly could mean helping to get rid of people who have a violent criminal record, who are not here legally. But if we're talking about the young man in West Liberty, who was brought here in his early teen years, who was a star soccer player on the soccer pitch, who was a construction worker who was doing his job and paying his taxes, and who was showing up for his immigration appointment when he was picked up to get deported back to Guatemala, to people he doesn't know in a country he hasn't been in over a decade. That doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't
does
make
not
sense
make sense
also
to me.
when, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's okay.
That the undocumented people, that crime is no different than a speeding ticket. It's not a criminal crime.
Well, I guess I would say this, right? Again, I want to go back to public safety.
Yes.
If we have people in the state of Iowa who have a violent criminal record, who don't have the right to be here, let's get rid of them.
Absolutely.
But we have a workforce crisis in the state of Iowa. We need people here to do the jobs that need doing. We need more people in the state of Iowa. We have over 1,000 unfilled teachers positions in the state of Iowa, right? Raise your hand if you run a small business. Anybody here who owns a small business? Raise your hand if you wish you had more people that you could hire. Okay, most of the hands stayed up. See, so when you talk to folks in the state of Iowa, they say, I want people here. I want someone who can do this job. And if we have people who are here who are following the rules, who are employed, who are paying their taxes, then to me, I don't understand why we would be rushing to get rid of them. It's not smart from a cold-blooded, we want people here to help Iowa work perspective. I also don't think that it's smart or Christian from a Christian perspective either. Next question. Yes, sir.
I think it goes beyond that. I think it's a fear factor that's been imposed. It's a moral issue, and I think it's a matter of cruelty. And that's what's being imposed here. And I tell you, I'm kind of a hobbyist, military hobbyist. And there's hardly a separation between what happened in 1933 and what's going on now. And
I'll say this.
This is horrible. This is horrible what's happening now.
I'll say this. Good acts should be done and credit should be given for them, but if you're doing unnecessary bad acts on your way to do good acts, and the good acts don't mean much anymore. And I'm not going to get into historical debates.
Okay, but there's no sense and when people have to wear masks over their face,
Yeah.
law enforcement, that cannot be excused, that cannot be explained.
Doesn't make sense to me. I associate people with law enforcement with courage and bravery, and I associate wearing a mask over your face with neither of those things.
That's Gestapo. That's Gestapo agents didn't wear masks over their faces.
We're going to see if anybody else has got a question here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Rob. My name is Selena. I've lived in Osceola for most of my life. I have an autistic son who has used a lot of the resources that this county has had to offer. I have a lot of concerns about the public education system as it is right now.
Yeah.
You are right, we are declining, and that is, I got educated here in Clarke County. I think I see some of my teachers in there. I see some of them. And the education that I got was wonderful. I was educated at the community college. I went to Buena Vista afterwards. My education has been solely in Iowa, and I had a wonderful experience. And it breaks my heart to think that future generations won't get similar experiences because of budget cuts, unnecessary budget cuts, to put money where it doesn't need to go. So I'd like to hear more about what you would do to improve our education system.
Sure. I'm glad you asked. When we talk public policy, one of the things we need to do, I think, first is zoom out to our fundamental values. Honesty is the best policy. I feel like I have grown up at a time where candidate after candidate made promise after promise and then broke them. And I'm not the kind of person who's going to stand here and say, I will do this, when this is a thing that I can't do unilaterally on my own as a governor, right? If I get elected, folks, I'm going to be working with the Republican legislature, okay? If that is news to you, imagine a news desk around me and a backdrop of, I don't know what, the city of Des Moines behind me, but it's going to be a Republican legislature. They have super majorities in both chambers right now, okay? I would like the majorities to be a little smaller, to even it out a little bit, but we're not flipping both houses. We're not flipping one house. That's what it is. And so I want to talk to you in this and grounded in reality, because I don't want you ever to have your experience that I'm responsible for when meeting with a candidate to be one of, man, that person really just told me whatever they thought I wanted to hear and then left. Because, thank you, I appreciate that. Because this is how our political system becomes broken in the first place. Because people overpromise and they underdeliver, and then voters are left to go, why would I go listen to another political candidate? That guy told me everything I wanted to hear. I thought it was going to be great. I voted for him, and then nothing happened, right? So I want to ground us all right there. Now, what do I want to do? What will I work to do? What will I try to get done? I would like to improve funding for Iowa's public schools. Now, the priority in Des Moines has been literally taking money from public schools and instead giving it to unaccountable private schools. Now, folks, let me be clear, I got no problem with private schools in the state of Iowa. I got no problem with the tax credit that we have had for decades. It has had bipartisan support, right? But this vouchers program, other than gutting the auditor's office, is the single biggest invitation to waste, fraud, and abuse in Iowa history. Okay? And if you think I'm exaggerating, does anybody want the details? I could skip the details. My staff sometimes tells me that my answers are too long. But I'm a prosecutor. I like to lay out my case for you. Okay? I'll make it very simple. There's only one thing that private schools, who get all of that money, by the way, until tuition is fully paid, all of those vouchers dollars go to the private school as tuition. And then there's only one thing on God's green earth that they can't do with that money. They can't pay a rebate to a parent. But anything else that they want to do with your tax dollars is a legal use of those tax dollars. So if they want to set up a new teacher's lounge with nice leather chairs and fancy furniture with your tax dollars, they can do that. Right? And I don't know how we'll find out because we're not allowed to audit them.
Can we make them accountable?
Can we make them accountable? Thank you for asking that question. And I appreciate the give and take. I want to have a conversation. What I want to do, right? Some people, would you repeal it? It's going to be a Republican legislature, folks. Let's not, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? Here's what I want to do. I want to call their bluff. The folks who voted for it, they like to talk about school choice. Great. Okay. Well, then let's make it school choice. If you want school choice, let's make it so that if you take public money, you have to take the public. You can't just turn students away because you don't. Let's make it so that if this is really about school choice, we should have an income limit. So that the wealthiest Iowans, who are already sending their kids to private schools in Des Moines, in Iowa City, and Cedar Rapids, aren't using this money to do what they were going to do anyway. Mm-hmm. Right? This money should be going to actually help people who did not have that choice. If that's really what the folks who supported this bill want, right? Just call them their bluff. Let me give you some advice. For anyone who's running that private business, that small business, if you're paying someone right now to do something that they would do without you paying them, stop. That's what we are doing with the vast majority of this money, right? And let's make it so that you've got to have an audit so the public knows where those public dollars are going and how they're getting used. Let's make it so you've got to have public meetings and public records to make sure that there's clarity for the public about how their money is getting used, right? I understand people want to have differences in curriculum. Within a great wide stretch, I have no problem with that. But public money deserves accountability for the public. We deserve to be able to see how that money is getting spent. And if we want it to be really oriented around school choice, the other thing we need to do is limit tuition increases. You can't just add the $7,500 on top of your old tuition to bump that up and then have it be out of range for all the same people who couldn't afford it in the first place. Okay? So we're going to call their bluff. If they pass that bill, great. Everything that I just said would make it a less bad program, right? If they don't want to do that, then we'll see where we would go from there.
And can I also ask you,
Yes, sir.
how about meeting standards that public schools have to meet?
Yeah, they should have to do that. I think that they do right now. There's an accreditation process.
Yes.
Now, one problem that I have with the accreditation process is they've sort of outsourced it and they've said, well, as long as they meet someone else's accreditation process and we at the Department of Education have decided to acknowledge that process, then it's fine. Why would we trust just any other organization with their accreditation process? I don't.
What kind of organizations do they outsource this? Are these like
Exactly.
recognized organizations
Exactly.
or
is it Joe Schmo saying, that looks like a good school, I think that's fine, stamp, right? Good question.
But it does go beyond accreditation. It's also about what standards that
Yeah.
students are meeting. It's about state testing. It's
Right.
about all of those kinds of
And
things.
and how good's that football team?
Right.
Yeah, well, which is another good example, right? I mean, private schools right now could take your tax dollars, put them into the most lavish and extravagant athletic facilities to pull in all of the best athletes in the state of Iowa and make competition uninteresting, right? That doesn't make sense to me either. Who else has got a question? Yes, ma'am.
I guess one thing that really irritates me is even during COVID, we outsourced millions of dollars to stuff out of state, and then when you talk about this private tuition stuff, and all of a sudden we're sending millions of dollars to some company out of state to shovel
Yes.
the paperwork. How come there's not enough smart people working in the state of Iowa that
Yeah.
we can't have them do business for Iowa instead of outsourcing our money?
I think that's a great question. I actually think that there are. And I'm glad you brought up the company
I know
that's
there
running
are,
the
but why are
program,
we- yeah.
right? Well, if I'm gonna say something that's my cynical part of me speaking, it's because if we pay all those tax dollars to that out-of-state company, some of it can wash back in the form of campaign contributions. Not that we would outwardly and openly agree to such a thing, right? But that's just, the guy that runs this company, Odyssey, is well known to be a deeply conservative figure and active in politics, right? So there you go. But to that point, we had to fight for 6 months just to get the amended contract with Odyssey, this company that handles and administers the state's voucher program. 6 months, they stonewalled us. Do you know what the changes were? So they bid out the contract, and Odyssey was the low bidder, let's acknowledge that. Odyssey signed a contract with the state of Iowa. The contract was then amended. The only changes after the contract was signed to its amendment was that we doubled the amount of pay that they can expect to get while they handle the program. They did not agree to do anything new. Not one thing. Literally, you can read through the contract. The only change is a new section called variable fees, where we are increasing the amount of money that we are paying them. We're doing this with nothing in return for taxpayers of the state of Iowa. Again, why did I start this by saying, right, that they are serving special interest groups who want your tax dollars and insiders who don't want to be held accountable? Exhibit A. Actually, at this point, that's like Exhibit D, but I wasn't naming the other ones. Who else has got a question? Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Darcy. I moved from Des Moines about 5 years ago. We moved down here so I could take care of my aging parents and start a family farm for my children. And I guess it's become kind of a bleak outlook as far as health care. And I'm wondering, where are your thoughts and your focus, if you win the governorship, what you're going to do with privatized Medicare in Iowa, and how that's going to help people like me, and probably you, who are sandwiched between generations of children that who, their healthcare is dependent on their job, and then parents who have retired and have very limited income when it comes to their healthcare.
Yeah. Number one thing, executive order on day one, reversing the privatization of Medicaid in the state of Iowa. Some folks would tell me, Rob, keep your answers short, just stop talking, you got them to clap, now shut up. but I think that most people want to hear details. I think that people think that details actually matter, right? And they don't just say things without support. We have audited privatized Medicaid in the state of Iowa. It is a disaster. We found a 500% increase in illegal denials of care after privatization. That is the number that we hit, 500%, incorporating feedback from the administration for how we should analyze this. 500%. Do we have any medical providers here? Okay. How do you do with getting your bills paid?
I'm on the hospital board, so that's.
Yeah. Has your hospital had to take out a line of credit or to hire new people just to get bills paid?
We're lucky. Our hospital is one of the more fiscally responsible hospitals in the area of the state.
Yeah.
So we've been lucky, and that was what happened was this thing from the state of Iowa and the hospital administrations gave us, it helps with Medicare on that, so, but
Yeah.
yes, we've been having more denials, and, you know, you have to hire more people, to keep up with the denials.
Right, and so, because and what he said is literally what our audits have shown across the entire state of Iowa. The vast majority of medical care providers, like hospitals, have had to hire more people just to get paid. Your costs are going up because those people themselves have to get paid for, right? So their claims get denied, they don't get paid, they have to hire more people to try to fight back and get them paid. They have to take out lines of credit. I know you all know how interest works, that has to get paid for, right? And so what we're doing is we're hiring out-of-state companies and sending our tax dollars out of the state of Iowa to administer the program in a way that is actually worse for Iowans and raising costs for Iowans. Here. Who else has got a question? Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna go back to education. And
Yeah.
how do you feel about the AEA? I had a child that was on AEA all
Yeah.
through school, and it was wonderful.
My mom was actually a PT, her entire career, physical therapist for Northeast Iowa, Keystone ADN. And she would drive around Northeast Iowa, helping kids who couldn't sit up learn to sit up, helping kids learn to walk who couldn't walk. And I remember the day she got a car phone with a giant magnet you'd slap on the top. And we all felt so much better because up there, lots of hills and curvy roads, and she'd be on the road in January, and if she was home late, we'd be wondering, if she wasn't home, we'd be wondering, is she okay? Because she worked really hard to take care of these kids, and there were days where she would come home. My kid learned to walk today with the same amount of pride that I have to think that she had when I learned to walk. Because she loved these kids. Folks, this is like my 732nd public town hall. Okay, Larry and I met at one, 3 years ago? 3 years ago? It's good to see you again. Never in 730 town halls did anyone ever come up to me and say, we gotta do something about these ADAs. Not one time. And I don't do it the way some people do it, to be clear. When I do a town hall, we tell you in advance that we're coming, right? It's not that I tell 5 people, hey, be here tomorrow morning, and then I'm in and out before anybody knows I ever can, right? Anybody can come, anybody can ask questions, you're so welcome.
Thank you.
Public service, right? This is what it's supposed to be. You wanna yell at me? Here I am. Thank you for not yelling yet. But I welcome criticism, I have no problem with it. I think that most of the time I've got a pretty good answer for it. I'm not perfect, but I try to really carefully do what I think is the right thing to do. And so I'm happy to have people come talk to me because I can usually give them an answer that helps them understand what's going on, right? Some people say that that's defensive. I say I'm just explaining. So I don't understand this. I don't understand why they did that bill.
I don't either. It's really upsetting.
It is. Now, I will say this. My approach to things is I am a prosecutor, I am an auditor. We are a year into this, 18 months into this. It's hard to know what our new reality is. The folks that are there, that I'm gonna be working with if I get elected as governor, voted for this. They're not just gonna say, you're right, I was wrong, let's reverse the whole thing. But I would happily work on making sure that we are making sure that kids in rural areas and small towns, which is what the AEA was centered for, right, are still getting access to care. And I'm sure that whatever we have going on right now after these reforms, we've got to get that figured out because we don't want kids slipping through the cracks right now. Not enough. Yes, sir.
Just 2 questions or comments. The first, back to healthcare. My wife is a licensed mental health practitioner. She's got a one person shop.
Yep.
It's been a disaster.
Yep.
The Medicaid issue has been an absolute disaster. You can't get paid. It's a constant fight.
Yeah.
To the point where you question why am I doing this?
Yeah.
It's awful.
Can everybody hear him? Because that's exactly, I hear from people regularly saying exactly this. They are a one-stop shop mental health care provider. They submit their bills and they don't get paid.
And it's gonna get worse.
Yeah, and so then, instead of seeing patients, you're taking either your time where you should have free time to be with your family, or your time where you should be seeing patients, and instead trying again to get paid.
But my question, I'm sorry, my name is Ty Wheeler, I actually work for the city.
All right.
My question or concern rather is the absence of any kind of reasonable, comprehensive water policy in the state. We have water quantity issues in southern Iowa, in western Iowa. We have water quality issues all over the state. And we've got communities that are spending tens of millions of dollars for wastewater plant upgrades, which aren't gonna do a thing for the total nitrogen, total phosphorus, because we're not attacking the entire issue. And it just seems like there's just no interest in innovation, in reasonable standards. What are we gonna do about this?
Yeah. So I think there's a really easy answer to that. Not what we've been doing. I mean, truly, right? Now, a lot of people want to have specifics. I'm going to have specifics. If I have specifics today versus next month, the election date doesn't move forward. It stays where it is. And I want to get this right. I grew up in Decorah. We have the best trout fishing in the Midwest, up in northeast Iowa, right? I used to go tubing constantly on the upper Iowa. I now do it with my kids, but I don't always. Because sometimes I look at the water and I wonder, right? And I think we are right to be concerned about this. I think this is a problem for the state of Iowa. I have consistently said so for years. Now, what are they doing in Des Moines? Again, I said they're serving insiders who don't want to be held accountable, right? And special interest groups who want to slice your tax dollars. So what do? They cut the number of nitrate monitors in the state of Iowa from 80 to 20. Because what you don't know can't hurt them, right? And they defunded 500 water quality monitors across the state of Iowa. Just machines that would be in the water telling us a lot about what's in the water. They defunded it. I have a word for that. Creepy. I mean, do you not want to know what's in your water? I want to know. They don't want us to know. I think that's wrong. So, we have more that we need to learn about this. There are a lot of people with ideas. There is a lot of information out there. I'm working on understanding that, right? Because again, my approach is, I could pull a plan off a shelf and wave it around and say, we got to do this. And then if you ask me questions, I'd probably have 2 talking points, sentences that I can spit out that probably are not responsive to your actual question. But I can make it sound like I answered your question. I don't do it that way because I'm sick of watching people do it that way. Thanks. I'm going to understand this issue. I have dove in on some of the studies. I have talked to folks at Waterworks. I have talked to folks in agriculture. I'm going to talk to everybody and try to get the best assessment of the situation that I possibly can, because I want to put together a plan that's actually going to have an impact, right? And it is something that is achievable. But you're absolutely right to say that it's a problem. What are you telling me? One more question. Okay.
On the Medicaid thing, what's the issue with not getting paid? Those are
the privatized companies, thank you. Now I can dive into the details. This is something that Iowans actually should have been really proud of, and it was a reason that we didn't need to privatize Medicaid. MCOs came in and they said, we're going to give people a financial incentive to do things that will reduce their long-term medical costs, right? There are certain populations and people in life where this is actually very clear and very effective. One of them is expectant mothers, right? Your life is changing, things are happening, and if someone says to you, hey, if you come to these appointments at your 3rd month and your 6th month and shortly before birth and then your first one after birth, we're going to give you a supply of free diapers for a year or 2, right? You can hit those goals, right? And they know that because of the tests that they can administer, they can vastly reduce the costs for that kid in their very early childhood. And so that's a good example. And so these companies went around the country and started doing that. And here in the state of Iowa, something that we did that was really smart, that we should have been proud of and should have just been protected in Des Moines, was we said, well, we can just do that as the state. And so we started the Iowa Medicaid Enterprise. And we started doing those same practices, whether it was for expectant mothers or for other people, where we said, we're going to give you the incentive to improve your behavior to lower your long-term costs, which is great for the state of Iowa because it saves money. Then, all of a sudden, Terry Branstad decided we are going to privatize Medicaid and we're going to do it in 6 months. The Center for Medicaid Studies, which administers the entire program for the United States, said, whoa, you can't do this in 6 months. That's like not possible. This is a big deal. But they rushed it through. It took longer than 6 months. They rushed it through. I don't think that the MCOs that bid to run the program knew that the Iowa Medicaid Enterprise had already trimmed the fat. Is everybody following? When I tell this story, I want to make sure that I'm being clear. Right? So the state had just already done the stuff that they were doing. Most states had not done that. So these companies came in, and why are they not paying bills? Why do you got to bill them 3 times maybe to get paid? Why, if you submit a batch of bills and one bill has something wrong on it, do they reject the entire batch? Because since we trimmed the fat as the state, they got to find a different way to make a profit. And that's by denying bills, by not paying medical providers, right? And by pushing some of the people who have been dealt the toughest hands in our society, quadriplegics, by pushing them out of their homes and into long-term care facilities, which is more expensive for taxpayers, but it lowers the liability for the MCO to see. And so that's why they think that's a good idea. Where are we at for time?
Should we scrub up?
Okay. So, look, folks, thank you for coming out. I appreciate that. For this election, right? If you sat here and you've been to events before, you saw and heard a lot of things that you have not heard at a political event before. I think people in this state are hungry for change, and that is why I know we can win this race. I also know that we can lose it. If we want to win, I need your help. There's lots of ways that you can help. Go on social media and share that you came to this event, right? Tell people to come and see me when I'm in their town. You can share our schedules, robsand.com/events, because I actually want to meet Iowans. I think that's important. Just say to people, hey, I saw Rob Sand today in Clarke County. He was so inspired. He made me weep tears of joy. He gave everybody a free pony. No, just tell him I saw Rob Sand today in the state of Iowa. Is that a question? Oh yeah,
Sometime I would like to make a comment.
Okay.
Please. I am thankful that you came. Thank you so much.
You bet.
I appreciate many things you said, but from my experience, I am going to state the fact that public money, they always say public money belongs to public schools. And yes, I think public schools are wonderful. I've had teachers that I am so grateful for, not from Iowa because I'm a transplant, lived here long enough to be an Iowan.
Yeah.
But still, nonetheless, it is the property taxes, my taxes, your taxes, that pay for the public schools, the public money.
Yes.
Therefore, may I finish, please?
You may.
Thank you so much. Therefore, if Jane wants to send her child to public school because she wants her child, she agrees with everything about public school, that's terrific. But maybe Dawn wants to send her child, which there's only so much funded for a private school, and she wants to send her child to private school, and maybe it's the first year, maybe she's not a wealthy person.
Sure.
Do
you like the idea?
If I may finish, please.
Well, I am also concerned about the time, and I think I know where you're going. You want to say that it's the taxpayers' dollars, right? The dollars don't belong to the public school; they belong to the people.
Well,
and I would agree with that.
But
that's why my answer on the question goes back to accountability.
There should be accountability. I agree so much with that.
Yeah.
And I do stand with a lot of things you say, but there are some areas that I don't agree.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
That is okay. I always like to tell people, if you want to have the perfect candidate for office, run. Because we're always going to disagree. But it's being willing to, it's being willing to stop my wrap up to hear you out.
Thank you.
You are
Well,
welcome.
even some of the people that are in office now, I don't agree with, even the people I like,
That's
I
right.
do not always agree with what they say, but there are things that I very much agree with, so
Yeah.
I'm kind of versatile actually,
Yeah.
but
And I think most people are. Most people don't want to be told that you have to fit into one box or the other. That's why I don't like the two-choice system. That's why I think voters deserve to have more freedom on their ballot. Because we're told there's only two ways to think, but there's as many ways to think as there are people in this room, right? And that's why at the end of the day I say, well, if you want to have school choice, let's actually make it be about school choice, not just sending this money to the wealthiest folks in Iowa who already could afford it anyway.
well, it is for the children and their interests, not for just the fact that it's public money that belongs to public school. It's in regards to what fits the children the best, what is their bent.
Right, and I appreciate that. We've got 3 more of these, so I'm going to wrap up.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
That's the question.
Well,
Questions are.
yeah, we've got to be on our way out. Do you want to throw it out there real quick?
Clarke County majority of citizens don't want wind turbines, and the state sued Clarke County if we don't let the wind turbines.
I don't know the status of the suit. I'm generally pro-renewable. I think that reasonable setback requirements are fair. I don't mind having them nearby, but I wouldn't want one right in my backyard. I do have to wrap up because we've got 3 more of these to go. And I got to finish telling you about. So if you like what you heard, if you like the approach that you're seeing or feeling, share it on social media, right? Go to robsane.com/events, share that with people, send it to them. Go to robsane.com and donate. We need people to donate, right? To get this message out, to help people understand that we are doing things differently, we do it as many free ways as we possibly can, but paying for it helps too. Iowans are 44th in the country in political donations. We don't make a lot of them. You'll never convince me that we are 44th in the country and how much we care about the direction of our state. So if you've donated, thank you. You can donate again. And follow me on social media. Share my posts when you see them. Let other people hear about them. That's a free thing that you can do. Sign up to volunteer on robsand.com. Right? That helps too. Let me tell you 2 quick stories for why, again, I say I know that we can win if we get this message out there. I was walking through Lindale Mall in Cedar Rapids with a friend of mine, just getting some steps in. And this guy comes up, he says, "Hey, you're Rob Sand. I'm going to vote for you. I was just watching YouTube videos about you this morning. I've never registered to vote before, but I'm going to vote for you." He's 28 years old. He's skipped 5 election cycles. But he said that message, I said, "Thank you. What did you see or hear that made you decide now I'm going to register to vote?" He said, "The idea that we should be bigger than Democrats and Republicans." Right? Then there was an op-ed that appeared that I would encourage you to read and share. It's called Voters Like Me. It was in the Marshalltown newspaper. And it starts out with this guy who says, "Here's a bunch of stuff I believe. It must be a Democrat, right? Here's a bunch of other stuff I believe. It must be a Republican, right? I am so sick of being told that there's only 2 ways to think. I am so sick of politicians who preach unity and practice division." It's so well written. And then at the end, he ruins it by making it about a political candidate. But gratefully, he made it about this campaign. He said, "I hope everyone in the state of Iowa is paying attention to Sand's campaign for governor because he's serious about doing things differently." Now, folks, if that op-ed appears on its own, more than a year in advance of an election day, things are happening. You know things are happening when the author of that piece recently left the cabinet of Governor Tim Reynolds of the state of Iowa. A job that he was recommended for by U.S. Senator Joni Ernst. Right? People are fed up. They know that Des Moines isn't listening to them. They know that Des Moines isn't looking out for them. And they want someone who is not just trying to be a Democrat or Republican, but trying to meet people, bring them together, and get problems solved for regular people in the state of Iowa. To make Des Moines serving Iowans, not insiders, not special interest groups. We can win this race. We will need your help. Thank you for coming here an hour into the effort.